That's okay. Yee-hoo! Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday.
All right, Patrick, we're going to get ready to roll this good
Evening.
Man, it's been a hell of a week already. All right, for podcast sake, we're going to go ahead and start rolling the intros, so here we go. This is Sober Mind. Here we go. Oh shit, that was the wrong one.
That's okay, it worked. This podcast contains adult themes and language. The views expressed here are our own opinions and experiences. We are not medical professionals.
In this podcast, we discuss our opinions about mental health, sobriety, addiction, and our pursuit of happiness and peace. This is Sober Mind.
Happy Tuesday. I know, I do too. Feels like we're heading to the Shire. Judi, my love, how are you?
I am good. How are you?
I'm doing real good. Patrick, my dear, dear friend, how are you?
Super duper.
I know it's only Tuesday. How's 48 hours of the week going for you?
Pretty good. We finally had a break in weather. How's it been going for you?
Beautiful spring.
It's lovely.
Yeah.
Here in the Midwest, it is not too humid, which is nice. It'll be here within a couple weeks, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think this is like one of the 7 days that we get throughout the year where the temperature's just right without the wind and the humidity and everything else and sunshine.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's like San Diego, a whale's vagina. I knew you'd get that, Patrick. Okay, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Ron.
We're going to do something a little bit different on this Tuesday Sober Mind Rewind. We're going to be watching, Patrick and I have seen the majority of this. I've only seen like a quarter of it, Patrick. I was saving the rest so we could do sort of a reaction, but Judi hasn't seen it. What we're going to do is watch part one of a 40-minute series from Patrick Teehan. I completely forgot what his acronym is. He's an LICSW. I think that's a licensed something. Anyway,
He's a specialist.
Excuse me. I subscribe to his channel. He is a childhood trauma specialist. He covers a bunch of stuff. This won't surprise anybody. It popped up on my stream one day. It's like, hey, crazy legs, you'll probably be interested in this with all of your childhood issues you got going on. Anyway, so what we're going to do is just dive into this first part real quick. We'll watch the segment, and then we're going to discuss it. I think our fan base knows how the three of us are. We could get one topic and talk for a long time on it, so that's pretty cool. Okay. Fade out the Hobbiton. And let me switch over to the browser view. Patrick, can you still hear me? All right, and I know you only see the front view, so you're hanging right off of the doctor's microphone.
All good. Well, I'll take it.
Up in an abnormal development. So number one is something that I call emotional delay. Emotional delay is when an emotion about something takes several hours or even a day to catch up with you. So there's the event, then there's you in the present, and then there's the emotions kind of catching up to you in the present. Let's say your boss or your partner asks something of you in the moment, and then in that moment you just kind of automatically said yes. And the day goes on and that kind of a thing. And then gradually you start to feel a pain of anger or a little bit of an escalation. And finally the emotion is like, wait a minute, was I just taken advantage of? Could be a situation like that, or it could be you see something ugly earlier in the day between other people, and then later it catches up with you, like something you see on the street. Or someone tells you that they can't make a commitment that they committed to you, and then you're in the moment, you're like, don't worry about it, it's fine. And then later you feel really let down, really disappointed. This feels like kind of an escalation of emotion that you weren't in touch with at the time of the event earlier in the day, and it just simply catches up to you, like I mentioned. You'll really know about this if you've ever gotten a rush of buildup of emotion that you can't quite place and then realize it was about that interaction earlier. How this might come from childhood trauma. I believe that these delays are really due to the childhood trauma issues of dissociation and hypervigilance. Childhood trauma survivors struggle with not fully being in their body and not being present in their emotions in real time. We tend to live in a cerebral kind of anxious place, in a thinking place and maybe that's where they're quickly saying yes to things because we live in a little bit of an emergency, which will be on another issue coming up later. It might be due to that kind of energy we have going on. The hypervigilance, I believe, is when our inner child kind of goes, wait a minute, like this, was I just taken advantage of, or was I just let down again? Or perhaps some anger and sadness comes up later. Kids growing up in childhood trauma leave their emotional body. They go up into their heads and watch out for what the adults are doing or what the adults need. And we're not attuned with ourselves in what we have going on in real time in our childhood, like what we need emotionally. We can trace an example of dissociations and hypervigilance, say if you grew up in domestic violence. And let's just say there's a fight on a Tuesday night, and on Wednesday you wake up, and then the worry about the other parent really starts to catches up with you as you go to school. That's an example of where this stuff isn't in real time, because during the fight on that Tuesday night, the child is too busy being freaked out about safety or just the charge of it. They're not even thinking, they're just kind of frozen. So some treatment recommendations for this. Practice discussing emotions when they come up with safe people. And I know the intimacy of that is kind of scary, but that's our way out of this. Another recommendation is know that when it happens, that it's your inner child catching up to the event that happened earlier after kind of living underground because of maybe you're in a baseline other trauma response, like just living in emergency. Start to explore some daily inner child dialoguing, which is journaling with your inner child. It's not just regular dialoguing, it's dialoguing between your non-dominant hand and dominant hand. I'm going to be referencing this a lot in this video about what they're feeling in the day-to-day. It's almost like the idea is to become a good parent for yourself and really become aware of what is going on with you, which is a process in the day-to-day. Another is to join a group or find a therapist if you can, or join a community such.
Okay. Babe, thoughts?
Well, it makes sense to me. I mean, I can remember many times where I would be in the middle of something and somebody would ask me a question or ask me to do something later on, and I would say, yeah, sure. And while I'm finishing my own task that I'm working on, I'm thinking to myself, I really don't want to do that. Why did I say yes? Why did they just? I really don't want to do that. So yeah, I can completely relate to that.
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
Patrick, when I first saw this one in particular, I got excited because this has me all over it. And I also, and maybe we could talk about this, I realized that this is sort of a rescuer portion of the drama triangle as well. The very beginning, the need to... Okay, let me articulate my feelings. I've found myself volunteering or saying, yes, I'll do something, sometimes just for like the rush of getting the acknowledgement of doing it. And then when I get done, I'm like, what the fuck did I do that for? Or you know what? It sabotages myself because I don't have good follow through, because I'm like, I didn't want to do that anyway. Why didn't someone stop me from volunteering? Patrick?
Yeah. For me, like this, for a simple explanation for me, this is compartmentalization at its finest. The behavior that was learned early was your genuine, valid emotional reaction was taken poorly. So you learn to say, well, that's bad. I'm going to put that way up there. Right. And I just need to be on standby. I am aware. I'm not processing anything. I'm just watching everything come out. Other items that come from this, John, is like while you're in the aware mode to stay continue not processing your emotions. This is when the drama triangle behaviors come in. Some people would gravitate towards the rescuer, right? Like he talked about children being hyper aware of like, what are the adults doing? What are the adults doing? They're just waiting for the adults to cue, right? So they're trying to be the rescuer, as in like they're smoother. They're just trying to, get through the event, right? And make smooth things over as much as possible. Other people, when they do the compartmentalization, this is where, a lot of gaslighting comes in too, where I literally will believe this item didn't happen, so I don't have to deal with the emotions too. So the delay is, I think he briefly touched on it, but it's a survival mechanism. Like I said, early we learned our response was invalid. Like somewhere along the way, like we got told to shut up, or we did it and we got an ill reaction, right, when we were kids. And so we learned not to show that. So the best way is to retreat inside, and we're just going to let this thing play out. And then all of a sudden, for what I sympathized with was when we talked about like mixing cues and delay and everything like that, is like, the 2 or 3 hours later, like you said, and you're like, what the fuck just happened? And you're just like, and it's like a rocket for me at that point. It's like, wait, everything's coming, and it's, like, because I couldn't even deal with it in the moment when it just cascades in. It feels like a time dilation, like you stretch it all out, nothing happens. And then all of a sudden, when you're supposed to process it normally over this duration, it gets packed into a little tiny window, and then it just like erupts, and that becomes my new fixation in my mind.
Yeah it's one of those things that when you're going along and you're in that just aware moment, you're in that just, I'm just going to observe, I'm just going to be here, but that little portion that you put away is knocking on the door trying to get in. And for me, it was always, slowly seeping back in, so that by the time it fully emerged, it was on explosive mode, and I was just going to be in child mode and screw everybody else.
Yeah. If the response was to withdraw within and delay that, addiction for me was the snooze button to continue to delay, right? Yeah. I don't want to deal with that shit. I don't want to deal with that shit. I don't know what happened. I don't want to know what just happened, right? I'm just going to power through this. Future me can deal with it.
Yeah. Or we can have a couple beers and try to
that's
bury
what I'm saying.
it.
Get drunk right now and forget about it, and future me can deal with it.
Yeah. Ooh, trying to deal with it with a hangover. Oh.
Yeah, when I was hungover, I'd always say, "Past me is an asshole."
Now that I think about that more, I've become way more aware and in tune with having that delayed emotional response to stuff. Not to say that it's okay. So I'm reactionary as well, and maybe a good. Hold on, so I'm going to butcher all of this. So help me out, baby. Got to help me unpack all this stuff. So I respond well to pressure situations. In fact, sometimes I wait until the deadline is about to expire, so then I get energized to work on my deadline stuff. But when it comes to responding to something emotionally, like I said in the beginning, watching that got me excited, knowing that, oh man, this is something that seems like it's a pretty popular behavior that gets developed very early on with kids. So this is something that I'm going to talk about, since I'm going to be going back to talk therapy by recommendation of the psychiatrist. For the record, she's like, "John, you're way too fucking broken for me. You need additional talk therapy, sir." It's like, geez, doc. No, It's good though, because I realized that no matter how much I think a lot of this stuff has been patched up, it just isn't. I can't.
I mean, you gotta go through it, process it, and then let it go.
Yeah,
Your backlog's several decades long, John.
I
Yeah.
know.
It's gonna take a little while to go through it.
Yeah, I was thinking about this thing again this morning when I was running about sorry, I'm going off on a slightly different path, but I've been really paying attention to what the psychiatrist was saying about the PTSD triggers. And so, like this morning when I was running, I ran by a house and I smelled fabric softener again, and I took a big old whiff, man. And it's just, I was like, oh man, let me see if I can start a little mini trigger. And sure enough, I'm like, what in the? It wasn't nearly as bad as it was. It just, I'm really in tune to it now. I was like, what the hell is it? I started thinking about when we lived in Sacramento. Life was super shitty at the time, and I would have to wait at a bus stop in the apartment complex. It was like a U-shaped apartment complex, and in the middle of the apartment complex was the laundry room.
Oh.
And I always used to hide, or like when it would be raining and cold and we'd be waiting for the bus, I'd be sort of huddled right there by the warm dryer vents.
Well, that makes sense.
I think it's just one of those things that it's got to be tied to stuff. Now I'm going to start to figure out where the hell the fresh cut grass apocalypse is hiding somewhere. But anyway, I liked hearing that's not an uncommon situation. So have I always complained that I'm always in my head?
Mm-hmm.
Patrick, sometimes I've always told people, like, I wish I wasn't this, take this in the spirit for which it's intended. But sometimes I'm like, I wish I wasn't so hyper aware of me all the fucking time. Does that make, I wish I could just be a toadstool about myself sometimes. Be like, whatever, bro.
Due to our compulsive natures, learning to retreat inward to our thinking space was the only place of reprieve, but we ended up making it our own prison a lot of times. So what's interesting to me about this, when you talked about, working under pressure and the deadlines, those were scripted and known outcome scenarios. These in particular, the emotional responses are the unknown, what we didn't, like, we don't know how to respond to it. So the immediate thing is just disassociation.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to make sure that, he's talking about the emotions and processing it. This doesn't mean when something happens to be like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening, like everything flowing. Because we also learn the power of the observer, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you can learn to step back in your mind, and this is not the same as disassociation. This is honoring the feelings as they are coming through you, so you are learning how to process them instead of just sticking them in a backlog. Because if you are aware and present and can process it, hypervigilance in the trauma sense is very taxing, because it just delays. It's just delaying the processing of that energy, and it ends up catching up with you at some point. And it's caused many blockages, that we've seen even decades long, that cause many other issues. So if we can be present and, invoke the observer, and by invoking the observer is talking about the emotion. And that's what I want to get at with him is like, remember when we talked about like, when our SO significant other would come to us and be like, what's wrong? And you're like, nothing's wrong. Nothing's wrong. Eventually, like, we had to learn to be like, talking about it. That's the part of that's a beginning habit of the delay, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what's happening, so I'm going to delay this. I'm going to stick it up here. It's some icky feelings, so let's just shelve that. Oh, nobody saw that, right? I don't know what's happening.
I think
I'm fine.
I think for me to help with that situation is to take a few seconds and just stop and you be in the present. Feel what I'm feeling and really think about what's happening right at that moment, and how do I feel about what I'm being approached with. And how do I really feel about what I'm being approached with? And it's okay to say no. It's okay to say no. I don't want to do that, or no, I'm busy, or it's okay to not have to appease someone else because you feel like you have to.
Yep. I mean, that comes with our continuing delay. This is the rescuer in the drama triangle, the people pleaser. I will keep the status quo if I say yes, and they will stop bothering me, and I will I will stop needing to look inward. If they ask me to do something, I say yes, they're off my back, and now I'm, on my way to not feeling again.
And then later on, when you're stuck in the middle of it, something you don't want to do, then you're into the victim mode. Yeah. Look at this. I'm stuck. I'm always stuck doing this. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. These are very powerful. I like, you suggested the return to, taking the breath. For me, early in meditation with this, when I didn't have words or I wasn't used to talking about my feelings. Basic stuff, not just returning to breath and counts, but like learning to feel like if your blood pressure is rising, is the temperature on your skin changing? What's like these feel like little minutia, little tiny details. Like, why are you asking about the temperature of your skin when you're talking about emotions?
Signs.
Because they're intrinsically tied together. And I'm not trying to say like I can determine my emotion by the temperature of my skin, but when a bunch of shit is going on with your body, it's using its own language to tell you like, hey, something's wrong. We need to start processing this. And, it's not going to be articulate. It's not going to be able to say like, it was the best of times and it was the worst of times. I'm feeling like really sad right now. It's going to go, like, I'm going to give you an itch here and your body temperature is going to rise on this part. And then you're going to start sweating. It's like, it gives you a whole bunch of, when you have the stress running through you, a bunch of weird things happen. And learning to tune into those, to return to body, return to breath really helped. Same thing with being happy. When you get those fluttery, anxious feelings, like, is this me being scared, or is this me being anxious? Is this me like not knowing, just fearing the unknown, right? Is this me being, am I showing true affection, or am I showing lustfulness here, to this person, right? Like your body can give you cues to a lot of that.
Yeah, it's just a matter of being in tune with your body, and being in tune and being present.
Yeah, too bad with the ADHD people and other people with addiction, that is the last thing that they want to do. You don't want to be in your body. You're looking to be in another state of being. And it doesn't matter if you reach the state of being that you wanted. Once you reached it, you want to be somewhere else again.
Yeah. You want to be in that altered frame of mind.
Yeah.
To where those outside, or all those little hurts and everything, they don't bother you.
You are receiving too much stimulus. So like dissociation, delaying the reaction, the addiction, like I said, not only like delays that even further, it just continues to shut down the stimulus. I am overstimulated. I can't deal with this. I'm going to drink. I'm going to use the drug of my choice, to mute or dissociate, or, like retreat to another place, or substitute the feelings that I'm getting.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I was drinking, this is obvious, but that whole negotiation process was always muted and conflicted.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah.
Because of the... Hold on, I want to explain this without using a bunch of buzzwords. Because of the delayed emotional response coupled with anxiety, when we get into the other portion of this, when the guy talks about living, with being depressed all of your life, that's a good portion of this too. But drinking, man, this is tough to explain. It makes a bunch of sense in my head. Drinking muted the negotiation process, and what I mean is that when we react to situations, we usually have a direction to go with it. For me, and anxiety and attention deficit, obviously it was always very reactionary and responding with old emotions. But drinking exacerbated that to the point to where it became hyper transitory, if that makes sense, to where you and I would get into arguments when we were drinking that made zero fucking sense of why we should ever be arguing about something like that, whatever it was.
Yeah, but we couldn't let it go.
So, right. And that the easiest thing that you and I would explain, like in our sober portions, is, well, it's because we're very stubborn. No,
Yeah.
that's not why. Now that we've been sober, we realize that there's a whole different, again, emotional negotiation tactic that I am just now starting to redevelop, and not being so much in my head, but being present in the moment. And people have always said that, and I know people always, well, you gotta live in the moment, bro. You gotta be, you gotta just let day to day. I'm like, I don't know I don't know how to do that. I'm now, not because of practice, but I think just because of sobriety, and my brain is sort of rebuilding itself. I even told my psychiatrist, I catch myself once in a while having like this, I'll be like making coffee or something. I'm like, whoa, man, I feel at peace and serene. It happens a lot now when we get done eating dinner and we're watching Jeopardy or whatever. Sometimes I'll just be sitting there like, I feel genuinely good. I feel happy. I feel like I can, something challenging or bad can happen in my life, and I'm not all Buzz Lightyear in my head. I'm not just gonna fucking freak out, man. I could just look at it and realize what I've always tried to tell people, which is very hypocritical of, well, you're not gonna die. You're not dodging bullets and mortar fire here. This is just it's something that fate has brought upon, and it's a challenge, and we got to figure out how to navigate it. And you know what? You're going to go to bed tonight, and you're going to get a good night's sleep, and you're going to wake up tomorrow, and life is still going to be cruising along just how it is now, but
You're going to be okay.
yeah. I hope that made any sense like it did in my head.
The brain is so amazing that it's such a strong thing, but it's so fragile at the same time. John, you and I were talking about this. I'm amazed about the neuroplasticity of it and the ability to heal, but at the same time, it's like, how the fuck did we get those wires crossed to begin with, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of them happened during childhood.
Yep. Yeah, that's true. That is true.
Yeah. Us humans are some of the smartest, stupidest people that I know. That's what I said. We're very resilient, but it's just so feeble too. We walk through life thinking we've got it all figured out, but then next thing you know, you're shitting yourself in your adult diapers in the corner playing Candy Crush because you're addicted.
I feel personally attacked. Oh, come on, man.
Or just aimlessly scrolling through a glass, projected liquid crystal diodes, and it's not even real life, and you're just like all day long. That's the feebleness I'm talking about in our brains. People don't even know how to survive anymore without this shit. Patrick, I was reading a study, like, what's really ruined society? Sorry.
Tell me. Do tell.
I know. Pray tell, John. What is ruined? Check this out, man. GPS. People don't know how to fucking get around anymore without it. Remember, Patrick, you were, I think
Seriously,
you're like,
are you a real man? If you got to ask for directions, you just find your way.
yeah.
Or yes, you could be Cro-Magnon and use a map.
It's those things that I think are eroding our neuroplasticity. But Patrick, what are you? I think you're like 15 years younger than me and Judi, right?
I'm 42 this year.
Oh, 8 years. Dang.
Yeah.
Okay. So you remember how it was, like where we live back in the day.
Back in the old times.
Back
Yeah.
in my day.
I had 6 phone numbers memorized in my brain.
That's right.
I know my
Mhm.
addresses. I had all the major crossroads.
That's right.
I know.
But it even got worse. Like if you were visiting from out of state, what we'd do here, I'm sure it would be, all right, so if you're cruising on 70, you got to get off, go south. That means go to Cloverleaf and then head, right. And then you're going to be, and then once you get to Costco, park there, call me, I'll come get you.
Yeah.
I think
That's how we used to do it, right, Patrick?
Right. Yeah, I mean,
Either that or you tell them to, okay, so you go down 2 blocks and at the house with the pink flamingo in front, you're going to turn right. And then you go down 5 more blocks. And when you get to the McDonald's, you're going to turn left.
that's my wife with directions. Yeah, the house with the 2 doors? No,
Yeah.
not the double doors, but the 2-door layout. It's like, what?
Yeah.
That's neuroplasticity at its finest, right? The amount of information that we consume on a daily is exponentially larger than even what it was like 20 years ago. So we just made room for that. The brain adapts, very wonderfully to a lot of these things. So I think it's a cool thing, and to that point, you're talking about being resilient and feeble at the same time. I think that's a wonderful encapsulation of the human nature is like we get both worlds to the extremes in the balance, and we aren't statically one. It's not like when we learn to live in the present, it becomes it's not like, oh, we're an enlightened being now. I ascended, I transcended everything, and I'm here. It's an ebb and a flow where we're constantly going back and forth with all that.
I have a saying that I say to myself every once in a while that I am supremely important and magnificently insignificant all at the same time.
Mm.
Yep. And I think that to bring it back to our original topic about this dissociation and delayed, like that just speaks to the, like here is a wonderful instance of the brain doing something absolutely insane and awesome at the same time. Like it has learned, because you cannot process, like if you were to try to process, you interpreted real harm. Like you learned if you emoted, real harm would come to you. Like whether it's not physically or emotionally, you learned that it was coming. So the brain said, you know what, let's put that on pause. And so it learned to disassociate. It's saying, hey, bud, some shit's going down. We're going to kind of like check out just so we can survive the next steps here. Right. And that is such a, it's wonderfully tragic. I don't know if I can put it any other way. But, these are the same mechanisms that have allowed us to survive our addictions. Yes, it did fuel it for a long time, too. But, if in my present moment, thank you, body, for looking out for me and making sure that I was in a better state to process those emotions. I may not have been fully ready, but I definitely wasn't ready when they first happened. So thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It does it physically too. When I broke my ankle in 2005, 2006.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
I broke it and I didn't feel any pain. It just shut all the pain receptors off. I mean, I couldn't stand on it and I had to hobble around, but I didn't feel any pain until later on, or like right before the ambulance got there. But yeah, it just shut all the pain receptors off. It's like, we don't need these right now.
Yeah, right. It's a little much.
Yeah. But yeah, I think being a child, when you're dealing with trauma or abuse or something like that, at a young age, you just don't have the tools to deal with it, and your brain knows that. It knows that it just does not have the equipment to deal with that or process it, so it just shunts it off and just puts you, in the reactive mode.
Yep.
But that's where, when you've got a reliable father and or mother figure in your life to coach you along those situations, that's, heads up, people, it's really beneficial to have a parent in your kid's life to cruise you along. Patrick, you're a good example. You do a ton of work with your kids, and obviously don't need to get into the details, but your boy, without having you around to calmly guide him, I know sometimes you probably look at it again like, why did you have to put a whole roll of toilet paper in the toilet? But the way you help him negotiate or navigate those emotions and sort of organize them, it's wildly crucial and wildly beneficial.
So this is where modeling, one of the techniques that I forgot his name mentioned was talking about the emotions, right? This is something that you can do for yourself so you're not stuck in that delayed. Same with our children. Like these things don't come with manuals, right? And I was in the middle of my addiction, when my kids were born. So I was in a lot of ways, I'm very grateful now that I feel like, hey, I'm emotionally growing. I'm about emotionally the same age as my kids are now, as we're growing since I came out of my drunken stupor. But what I'm trying to say is, I don't have the instruction manual and I don't know how to do it a lot of times. The biggest breakthroughs for me is, like when he comes, he's like, hey, Dad, why was that person so mean or that, and I would have to say like, I didn't have I didn't have Aesop's fable pulled up to be like, here's the lesson of the day. Here's the moral of the story. Part of me to teach was like, I don't know what just happened. I don't know how to respond to that. When that happened, I felt angry that they didn't see me, or they must have been frustrated about something. And I didn't know. There's probably nothing that I could have done to make the situation better. Like it just literally talking about it, like the way it made you feel and the emotions. And those have been so critically important, not only for my children's growth, but my growth as well. Right. And it's for me, like they are such a wonderful foil, because when you talk to adults, sometimes when you're going through the emotions, like we're like, it makes me feel icky. I feel, like when you try to come up to an adult like that, they're like, what are you doing?
What are you,
And
10?
with my kids, they don't have any preconceived notions when I'm like, I felt scared or whatever, and it like, I think there was a situation where it was with, when I was with my son and something happened, and like afterwards I said, I think I got emotional, and I just remember telling him that I was scared. Right. And I felt like a little kid, if I told that to another adult in that situation, they'd be like, there's nothing to get scared about there. I'll have to remember the story exactly, but I remember his response, and he just goes, yeah, I don't know what happened either, but it's okay to be scared, Dad. We're here together. We're figuring it out. I was scared too, but I was glad you were here. And like that kind of like out of the mouths of babes,
I was just
that
thinking
kind of broke me. That kind of broke me down. I get to talk to them. Like I grew up and my parents were like, emotion wasn't readily shown. So children are to be seen and not heard is a very common theme, right? And like, I know my mom was very loving, and she showed that when she could to a limited degree. But at the same time, like, I never got to see them work through a lot of these things, like the difficult situations. And when you don't see that, you're a kid. Like I said, like Judi, like you said, you don't have these tools. So what do? You retreat, have your addictive behaviors that you're just looking to soothe yourself or, like keep yourself out of harm's way. And that's
You stay in a reaction mode.
Yep. That's where the hypervigilance comes from, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how to react, so I'm just gonna I'm just gonna stay on watch all night and all night the next night, and I'm just not gonna sleep. And and it's just so exhausting because when we get later into some of his trauma issues, it's interesting to what other issues or emotional struggles pop out because of this hypervigilance.
Yeah, just wait, babe. It's really good.
Can we watch another one before today or?
Let's do this. Let's get ready to wrap this up. I don't have the mental fortitude today to continue a lot of this conversation. I'm just zoning out. Plus, I want to go play God of War.
Oh yeah, we're so far into it. It's awesome.
What I was thinking was, Patrick, we were kicking around a couple ideas for Saturday, but do you want to continue on with a couple of those from the doctor and we'll discuss them? I think it's a great conversation.
We'll always fill up time.
Yeah, for sure. Let's do that.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay.
You want to call it?
Yeah, Patrick.
All right.
Do you want to wrap it up for the night, or do you have anything else you would like to discuss?
No, except for our closing is, be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
And for this, being present, what they talked about of not delaying the thing is be kind to yourself means let's take a page out of Mr. Rogers, like I like you just the way you are. Don't get mad at yourself for a delayed reaction, and don't get mad at yourself for not being able to process if you feel that. That's okay. Your mind's just looking to survive.
Yeah.
And it's doing what it's supposed to do.
I love that.
Yep. I agree.
Man, I wish Patrick was my dad.
You can ask my son. He'd probably be like, "Yeah, you're the worst dad ever." And then 5 minutes later, it's something else. So we just ride those waves too.
Yeah. You want to run Sunday?
Sunday, what do we got? Yeah, let's run Sunday.
Maybe a 10K. So I told you, are you still interested? Did you ruminate on the Longview Lake?
I told you I'm in.
Okay. Half marathon. We were running a couple weekends ago, and Patrick goes, "Way to sell it to me, John," because here's how I started it out. I was like, "Hey, man, we were in the middle of a run. The endorphins are going. I was like, hey, I've been thinking about this. There's a super shitty run. It's horrible.
It's at the coldest time of the year, just
so
about.
cold.
Yeah, it's out at the lake. You get this weird lake effect, and he's like, I was like, would you want to do it with me? We could start training up for it. And he's like, oh, since you sold it like that, who wouldn't want to do it? But we don't have to even start now. It's like 2.5 months to prep for it. We don't want to start getting all half marathon mileage right now, but I look forward to it, man. It is fun when you get done. Plus, I told Patrick that's our yearly excuse. So after that, guess where we get to go? To eat.
Jack Stack?
Jack Stack.
All right.
Gorge ourselves.
I'm going to
I
eat a
won't be
whole
doing
set of
half
ribs.
marathon.
Yeah.
I'll do the 10K.
You want to do the 10K?
I'll do the 10K.
Okay. Dad'll be there. He'll have a thermos of coffee for us. So, all right.
I'll do like a slab of ribs plus a sandwich.
Oh man.
After a half marathon, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna do the Hatfield with brisket and smoked turkey, French fries, large cheesy corn, and a carrot cake. Have you had their carrot cake, Patrick?
No.
Oh, so good.
Jack Stack sides are good. Their version of the Z-Man is kind of heartbreaking, but still okay.
I didn't know they had one.
Yeah, they made a Z-Man knockoff.
No, the Joe's Kansas City version, or Oklahoma Joe's for you folks out there. All right, awesome discussion. Okay, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for all the support. got a ton of
Yes,
subscribers.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Be kind to yourself.
Yeah, be kind to yourself.
Be patient with yourself.
Be patient, and like Patrick said, just have faith in your broken brain. He said it in a much better way. All right, everyone. Have a good rest of your week. We will see you guys on Saturday. Bye, Patrick.
See ya.